Welcome to the Ultimate Snake Eye Fire King Guide, where in this video we're going to be showcasing many one-card combo plays, how to play through Nibiru, Maxx C, and more. Let's begin. For the first one-card combo with Snake Eye Ash, we're going to be using it with no Snake Eye Oak in the deck, which is the OCG way to play it. In the TCG, they play with Oak in the deck, but in Master Duel, the players are split. So I'm showing you both ways. Let's go. And we are also with this play going to be playing around in Nibiru. So Ash on summon, activate searching for a Poplar. Poplar, when added, will trigger to summon itself onto the field. On summon, will trigger to grab an original Sinful Spoils. We're going to link off the Poplar into a Link Karibo so we can activate the Poplar on Grave to equip itself into the back row. And then with it in the back row, we're going to use the Ash to send the Poplar to come forth and summon from the deck a Flame Burst Dragon. It's important that we're summoning this either on the 5th summon or less to play around Nibiru. And now at the Flame Burst in the field, we're going to equip the Poplar from the graveyard into the back row. We're now going to use Original Sinful, send Poplar to the grave to come forth and summon from the deck a Ponix. Ponix on summon will search for the Fire King Sanctuary. On activation, it will play the Fire King Island. If the Fire King Island leaves the field, it destroys all of your monsters. But the Fire King Sanctuary will protect it from destruction by destroying a fire monster instead. Very important. Now the Fire King Island will be activating to pop a card we control in our hand or on the field that's a monster, and ideally we are destroying a fire monster. By destroying the Ponix, we're going to add the Garunix. Garunix will activate from the hand or from the grave to summon itself onto the field in response to a fire monster being destroyed. That we have. In possession, that is. So Garunix will be destroying from the deck in Arvata, and the Arvata you really want in circulation because we could reborn it, and then it will be able to negate any monster effects like Nibiru. Now when Arvata itself is destroyed, it will reborn from the graveyard a fire monster, but it will be negated. Now we're going to go straight into a Link 3 Promethean Princess. Promethean Princess will now be reborning the Arvata, and just like that, we've made sure to have the Flame Burst on the field the entire time while we were able to get Nibiru'd, because if Nibiru would have happened, it would tribute the Flame Burst, then we would reborn 2 monsters from the grave. And now that we have Arvata, Arvata is going to be able to negate Nibiru. Now we can make the Flame Burst leave the field, we no longer need it. We're going to link off the Promethean Princess and the Sunlight Wolf, I should say into a Sunlight Wolf with the Flame Burst Dragon. That will trigger the Flame Burst, reborning 2 monsters from the grave, level 1 fires. Now summon it behind the wolf to trigger its effect to add from the grave the Flame Burst Dragon. Now we're going to link this up into Masquerena. I know many of you are familiar with this potentially of summoning an Ambler Whale. In this specific combo, we are not going for the Ambler Whale because we're using Arvata to destroy the Flame Burst Dragon instead, but in many of the other combos, it is a lot more common we will be summoning the whale. Now, what do we have here exactly? If they activate a monster effect, the Arvata will be able to negate. And by negating, we'll destroy the Flame Burst, which will reborn from the grave, which will also trigger the Garunix to reborn from the grave. So we're on just 1 disruption so far. Then the Masquerena could link off with all those extra bodies in the field into a 4-material Apollo USA, into a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th negate. So that's 5 disruptions. And then in the graveyard, we have Promethean Princess, which on a special summon of an opponent's monster, we're going to be able to destroy it. So that's going to be 6 disruptions. And then the Garunix is going to be able to destroy a Kirin from the deck, which will then reborn a monster from the grave, which will then destroy a card in the field for a 7th disruption. Let's go. Now what about the 8th disruption? There's an 8th disruption. I'm going to keep it a surprise at the end of this duel. They're going to summon a Unicorn. We're not going to be activating Promethean. Arvata will be negating for our 1 out of 8 disruptions. Negate the Magician's Soul's Mate by destroying the Flame Burst Dragon. Now, that's going to trigger the Unicorn to look at the extra, we do not care, but the Flame Burst Dragon is going to be reborning. The Garunix has witnessed a fire card being destroyed, so it's going to trigger from the grave or from the hand to reborn onto the field. Come forth, Flame Burst reborn our Ash and our Ponix. That's right, even Ponix can be reborn with the Flame Burst. Ash will activate, Ponix will activate. This will be for follow-up plays. Garunix activate, which is our disruptor play. Now Masquerena link up with all of those cards. That's a 4-material Apollo USA at 3,200 attack, and we'll be able to negate 4 times. We also want to protect it from battle, so we're going to do that in a bit. By destroying the Kirin from the deck, it will be triggering after this chain resolves. We're going to add a Skyburn, which could pop cards in the field, but that's for a follow-up play. We're also grabbing a Poplar. Now, the Poplar we're actually going to be triggering right now and not use it for a follow-up play, but it will be searching for a follow-up play. And making sure to summon the Apollo behind the Wolf, which was the only option here, triggering the Wolf to add back in the grave the Flame Burst. Kirin is now resolving, reborning any Fire King from the grave or from the hand, and then it will destroy non-targeting a back row card or a monster, wipe it out. Wolf is going to be adding back the Flame Burst Dragon. Poplar is going to be searching for follow-up, so everything in the hand now is just follow-up. They're going to special summon again. We're going to Promethean Princess, take out the Arvata. Now, Promethean locks us in a fire monsters only while it's on the field. So this is our last opportunity to summon the Linkuriboh over a level 1 monster, which will protect the Apollyon from being battled into. Come forth, Linkuriboh, wipe out the Arvata, and now we have the Promethean. Arvata will trigger, reborning a monster from the grave. And just like that, we're back to having a full field of monsters again. 6 monsters. Poplar equipping itself into the back row, not too important here. Now they have Mo Yi on summon activate to summon a token onto the field. Apollyon negates. Now, for this replay, I was unable to set up the computer to maybe negate it 3 more times with Apollyon before going into our major disruptor. Right now, get ready. Not this one, this is just Linkuriboh. Reduce! All right, great, now this will be it. They're gonna special summon, which will trigger the Fire King Sanctuary. Fire King Sanctuary is going to blow up the entire field of monsters, including our own, so we do lose out on the Apollyon, but make sure in a real duel that you use up your other negates with Apollo before wiping her out. All right, let's do this into the Hyang. Garunix Eternity on summon, wiping out the entire field, just like that. Now let's just wrap up this duel very quickly with some joke plays. If the Garunix dies, it reborns 2 monsters on the grave. And we're now going to be hopping into the next replay, which will be with Oak in the deck, which is the TCG way to play the deck. All right, wipe them out, and let's do it. Now we're back again with a 1-card Snake Eye Ash, but this is the TCG play with Snake Eye Oak in the deck. This is the TCG's favorite play to do with 1 Ash. And if we look at the analytics here, 74% are currently playing the Snake Eye Oak, but 26% are not. Will it continue to trend as more people are playing it, or maybe more people will drop it? It's all about if you want more hand traps and less dead cards, as Oak could potentially be dead in your opening hand. Now, let's get to it. Let's start this off with the Ash. We're going to keep this on the screen for a little bit longer so you know it is a different play than we did previously. Ash on summon, activate to grab the Poplar, summon itself onto the field, grab an original Sinful, send itself plus the Poplar, summon for the deck, the Oak. So this is now where the combo gets different. The Oak is going to be reborning from the graveyard a monster as the Poplar equips itself into the back row. Now Oak will be sending itself plus the Poplar to summon from the deck our Flameburge Dragon. Now, why was it important to play Oak? You're about to see. We're going to equip the Poplar, link this up into a Sunlight Wolf. If we look into the graveyard as the Flameburge is activating, it has to reborn 2 level 1 fires. We currently have only 2 level 1 fires because of the Oak, with the Poplar being in the back row. You do not want to activate the original Sinful Spoils early. We're going to be setting up an Apollyon negate first. So we're going to reborn Ash and the Oak and the Sunlight Wolf, which cannot be made with a Linkuriboh. It has to be 2 fire monsters. We're going to add back the Flameburge after summoning to where it's pointing to. And the TCG loves Doolittle Chimera. In the OCG, they're not really playing this card. So again, you're going to have more space you got to take up in the extra deck and in the main deck for this play. Now we're going to link this up into our Apollo USA. Just like that. Let's say they were saving a potential Ash Blossom, or they want to be using the Nibiru. In the other play, they could Nibiru you, and you would just eat the Nibiru, and you would still have a decent play afterward. But with this play, you have your Apollyon to negate their Nibiru. They're not going to be able to summon it right here, right now, and you're going to now be going through with your play that they're not going to be able to use Ash Blossom on either. So anti-Ash, anti-Nibiru before you activate that original Sinful Spoils, and it's going to be up to you if you prefer this play or not. We're going to summon from the deck our Ponix. Ponix will grab the Fire King Sanctuary. Sanctuary will activate, equipping onto the field spell, the Fire King Island, pop in the Flameburst in the hand to grab a Garunix, and then Garunix will trigger, summoning itself onto the field, popping the Arvata. Now, this is a really good part of the Doolittle Chimera. Doolittle Chimera will be reborn with the Arvata as a Link 2. So 1 body, Link 2, making an easier Promethean Princess. Also, if the Chimera is destroyed by battle or card effect, you're going to target any fire monster in the graveyard, add it to the hand, and it does not have the summoning restriction as the Sunlight Wolf has that does not allow you to summon it for the rest of the turn. So in a way, it's better than Sunlight Wolf, but could be used with it. We're going to now make our Linkuriboh, and then we're going to further link this up into our Promethean Princess. Promethean, activate, reborn from the grave, Arvata mate, further show conning, and now we have the Amblo Whale. And you're going to see what's good about the whale. Whale, what do we have here? As they open up with a Mo Yi, we're going to use the Arvata or the Apollyon to negate. I do think it's a good priority to use your Arvata as soon as you can to wipe out the Amble Whale. So by taking out the Amble Whale will now trigger, so will the Garunix. So we're going to target a Link 3 or lower in the graveyard, and we're going to reborn it. Doolittle Chimera, come forth. Garunix will also be triggering because it witnessed a fire monster being destroyed. Summon, activate, destroy the Kirin from the deck to now trigger in the grave. Reborn a Fire King, pop a card in the field non-targeting. Now the Ponix will be able to trigger for a follow-up play. The Skyburn, which we're not going to be using this replay. They're going to now be summoning a Unicorn. We're going to use the Promethean Princess, taking out the Doolittle Chimera. We're going to summon Linkuriboh before we're locked out of being able to summon it. And now that the Chimera gets destroyed, it's going to add back from the grave a Kirin, which has the quick effect of popping any fire monster we have on the field or from the hand to summon itself onto the field. And you're going to see why that's very important. Now they're going to be summoning the alternative white dragon here. Sure. Magician's Soul. We're going to use the Apollyon to negate. All right, all right. And now we're going to be using the Kirin. Kirin is going to... Oh, no, they're going to activate first. I got to remember the script here. There you go. Good computer. Apollyon, second, negate. Now the Apollyon got through all its negates here. And now we're going to use the Kirin. Why are we using Kirin? It's going to be destroying a monster, which we're going to be destroying the Promethean Princess, which will now trigger the other effect of the Amble Whale to destroy one card on the field non-targeting. Let's freaking go. So non-target, wipe up the alternative white dragon. They're going to summon a Unicorn. We're going to trigger the Sanctuary with the Kirin that we summoned from the hand. Come forth and Shokan into Garunix Eternity. Wipe out the entire field of monsters just like that. You have the Arvata reborning the Ponix, then destroying it during the end phase, so it triggers during the next standby phase to add back to the hand. So you let me know, which play did you like more? The TCG way, where you have to use up more slots in your extra deck and the main deck for the Oak and the Doolittle? Or you could instead keep the room and go with the first Snake Eye Ash play instead. Now, you're going to want to pay attention through tournaments to see which play ends up being more popular. So with that said, let's get ready for the next replay as this duel finishes up, as we're just doing some funny plays here, showcasing as the Garunix Eternity can be destroyed to then reborn two monsters in the grave. We have the Arvata negate as they're going for game, just like that, over 11,000 damage. Yes. Now, what happens if you get Maxx C against your one-card Snake Eye Ash? This will be if you're playing Nightingale in your extra deck, which was the way to counter Maxx C in the OCG. Let's go. So it's going to be very simple. We're going to activate the Ash, add the Poplar, trigger from the hand. They're going to chain the Maxx C. Now they're drawing per special summon. We're going to be adding the original Sinful, but we're going to be going right into the assembled Nightingale. And just like that, we are essentially guaranteed another turn of play, because this says that when you detach a material, until the end of this turn, your Leerlust monster cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and you're also going to take no battle damage whatsoever. And also, this is going to be helping against future decks like Tenpai Dragon, but for now, it could also just be used against Maxx C. Now, it's still very important that you want to play around a card like Impermanence on their turn. So I'll just showcase to you real quick to not use this in the draw phase. There you go. Beaver Warrior in response to a card being on the field, either in the back row or on the main monster zones, wherever it is. We're now going to use the Nightingale, and now we're fully protected from taking any damage. We're guaranteed another turn. This will now be the Divine Temple play against Maxx C if you choose to play Divine Temple in your deck. If we click on it and see how many people are actually playing it, the majority are not playing it at 56% at 0, but maybe after seeing this play against Maxx C, you may change your mind, and I'm not advocating for this. This is just an option. So we're going to be activating the Ash, add the Poplar, chain, and then just like that, we got Maxx freaking Seed. We want to give them minimal draws, so we're going to be grabbing the Divine Temple here. Divine Temple, set up our Flameburs. We're going to special summon just once after the Maxx C initial summon of the Poplar. So they got to draw 2 cards. They draw 2, but we're going to see what we could do off of that play. We're going to equip the Snake Eye Ash, and now with the Divine Temple plus the Masquerena, if they summon at all, special summon, normal summon, that will trigger the field spell to summon from our back row. So we're going to be summoning from our back row, Flameburs, and then we're going to be able to use the Flameburs to reborn from our back row, Snake Eye Ash. Ash will activate, add from the deck a Poplar mate, trigger, come forth and summon onto the field. We're now going to use the Masquerena to link up with our entire field into a 4 material Apollyon after we got Maxx C on our very first turn. We have the original Sinful set up and ready for the next turn, and we're also triggering all of our effects getting ready. So if you want the ultimate protection of Nightingale, or you could have big plays like this where the Apollo can actually disrupt their field, then you're going to have a decent follow-up. And then off of this, you also could activate the Ash to add from the deck. Poplar also add from the deck. Now at this next play, many people are calling for this deck to be banned because of this. This is against Infinite Impermanence or an Effect Veiler, which are the best ways to stop a Snake Eye Ash. But because we have Avatar Kirin, we can completely play around it, and I'm going to show you the full play and disruption on what to do. So many of you know that this deck could already do this, but do you know what you're actually supposed to do after you do this? We're going to be chaining the Kirin to dodge the Effect Veiler, which otherwise against a regular Snake Eye deck, this would hurt them quite badly. Pop in the Ash, summon the Kirin, and now let's get fully popping off. Poplar add from the deck, trigger summon itself onto the field, search our deck for the original Sinful Spoils. We're going to link off the Poplar into a Linkuriboh. Triggering Poplar to equip itself into the back row, activate original, send Poplar, summon for the deck, a Ponix on summon, search for the Fire King Sanctuary. Sanctuary, activate the field spell. We're going to link this up into a Hida here. Why? Because I do want a monster in the graveyard. I want the Poplar, I should say the Ponix engrave, because when we destroy the Kirin, it needs to have something to summon. So we're going to pop the Kirin, add a Garunix. Kirin will trigger, and the Garunix will also trigger. So if you have any other way you would like to get the Ponix in the graveyard, you don't have to summon the Hida here. Now, trigger Garunix because a fire monster was destroyed, summoning from the hand, reborn from the grave of Ponix, Garunix destroying from the deck in Arvata. Arvata is going to be reborning the Kirin, and then we're going to further link this up into a Promethean Princess. Now, this is where things are going to get a little hairy here. Promethean Princess reborning the Ash instead of the Arvata. What the heck's going on? We're going to use Ash to send itself plus Garunix to summon from the deck. Now, if you want to get spicy, you could use the Ash to send the Sanctuary, but the Sanctuary does protect your Fire King Island from wiping out your field of monsters. We're going to summon for the deck Flame Burge Dragon. Come forth, Flame Burge is going to be setting up an Ash boss, I should say an Effect Veiler, into their back row. This will turn off on the opponent's turn the ability to use a card like Infinite Impermanence. They also are not going to be able to use a card like Evenly Matched, so let's get further playing. Now, we're going to Shokan into Sunlight Wolf, triggering the Flame Burst Dragon, reborning from the grave, Ash, and the Poplar. Wolf's going to trigger, add back the Kirin to be used during the opponent's turn. Further Shokaning into a Masquerena. And now we're going to be making an Ambler Whale. Now, if you want to fully play around something like a Super Poly, you could just fully summon the Ambler Whale with their entire field and not leave the Ponix on field. Otherwise, you could get potentially Super Poly'd, which is quite nasty. But otherwise, the Ponix will be helping the field. All right, so what kind of disruption we have here? We don't have Kirin now, so what's going on? They're going to summon. We're going to use the Kirin to pop the Ambler Whale, trigger the Whale, and trigger the Garunix, reborn from the graveyard, come forth and summon. Ambler Whale will be reborning the Masquerena. So this is very important why you should not be using your Promethean Princess early, especially not to destroy your Ambler Whale, because if the whale is destroyed by Promethean Princess, the whale can then not summon the Masquerena from your grave. So that's very important. Hold on to your Promethean if you can. Now Garunix will be triggering, popping an Avatar Kirin from the deck to then reborn the Arvata. Now we have the Arvata Monster Negate ready. They're going to be summoning an alternative white dragon here. We're going to use the Masquerena. We're just going to link off into a Little Knight because we want the level 8s to be on the field for this Fire King Sanctuary play, and we want the Arvata to be able to negate a monster effect by destroying a fire monster. So Little Knight on summon, get rid of the alternative white dragon, come forth, Unicorn. Now, we didn't negate yet with Arvata, so are we wasting our Arvata here? No, we are not, so get ready. Garunix on summon, wipe out the entire field of other monsters. Arvata, reborn the Ponix from the grave. They're going to be summoning a Mo Yi. That's going to special summon. And now, a really late Promethean Princess. We're going to pop the Garunix Eternity. Linkuriboh, summon before the Ponix gets wiped out here. And just like that, we're going to be triggering, get ready, come forth, Promethean Princess, trigger the Garunix Eternity during the opponent's turn to reborn 2 monsters from our grave. Arvata is back and protected by Linkuriboh. So we still have our Monster Negate ready. All right, what now? They're going to activate a monster effect. We're out of disruptions after the Arvata, right? Wrong. We're about to not only negate, but have an extra disruption by destroying the Promethean Princess that will trigger in the graveyard our Ambler Whale. Amble Whale, because a Link 3 or lower was destroyed. Activate, non-target, pop a card in the field, just like that. So this is a variation of a play that you could be doing, and you kind of know how the plays are going now after you use the Kirin to pop the Ash. So use your Promethean to reborn it from the grave. And then we're just going to be cleaning up this duel. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Let's hop into more plays. Now, many of you have already seen the combo of using Zealantis to banish your opponent's monster, resummoning on the field, triggering your Promethean Princess to pop it, then going for game. But a lot of people are confused on how to make a good play on an open field. How do we have a one-turn kill play? So we're going to speed on through this, OTK, and if you don't know the Zealantis play of getting rid of their monster, we'll showcase that right after this. So open field, one-turn OTK combo with one card. So let's focus on what to do on an open field. All right, where you got the Ash, Poplar, and then making the Link Karibo, some for the deck, Flame Burst, equipping to the back of the Poplar, send it to come forth in some of the Ponix. Ponix is going to be adding. Remember, we're kind of playing around Nibiru here by keeping the Flame Burst in the field. Do the Island, pop the Poplar, grab the Garunix, trigger, come forth and summon. We're going to send Arvata. We're making sure to not use the effect of Flame Burst being sent to the grave until we have an Arvata on the field. Reborn Arvata, now we could use the Flame Burst. We're going to be making a Raging Phoenix. Now the Flame Burst will trigger, reborn from the grave. We're going to Shokan this up into a Nightmare Phoenix. Now we're going to link off the Raging Phoenix into a Zealantis. And just like that, on an open field, we do not have enough for game. But because the Phoenix is co-linked to the Zealantis, we're going to pop up to 2 cards on the field, taking out our own Nightmare Phoenix, which will trigger the Raging Phoenix to reborn from the graveyard to come forth and summon for the final amount for game. Now, this one-card combo is a one-turn kill that will be able to pop 1 monster on the field, plus pop 3 cards in the field, which could be the back row or other monsters. And then for the 5th monster, we're going to have to attack into it. But this will be a one-turn kill combo with 1 Snake Eye Ash with at least 1 monster on the field, plus any other card that we want to pop. So let's speed on through this. Ash on summon, grab the Poplar, come forth, onto the field we go, add our original Sinful. We're going to link this off into a Link Karibo. Poplar trigger, equip itself from the back row. Ash send itself plus Poplar to summon the Flame Burst. Flame Burst is going to equip the Poplar here. We're going to send the Poplar to then summon. If we did not need the Flame Burst effect to send with the original, you could use the Flame Burst to push an opponent's monster into the back row as an extra form of disruption. So you have an additional card here like the Field Spell or a Fire King Sanctuary. Do not send the Fire King Island though, it will wipe out your own field. But otherwise, you then would have the additional Flame Burst. We have the Fire King Ponix on summon, grabbing the Sanctuary, pop the Ponix, grab Garunix, come forth and summon itself onto the field. Garunix pop the Arvata, reborn from the graveyard Ponix. Now we're going to link this up into Promethean Princess. Promethean Reborn Arvata, further Shokaning this up into a Raging Phoenix. Now we're going to trigger, reborn from the graveyard, and then we're going to further Shokan into Zealantis. Now, you do not need to make the SP Little Knight. Not required unless they have a ton of cards in the field and you want an extra pop with the Zealantis. I only made her because she can co-link with the Zealantis after we banish the field. Otherwise, with the Ash or Poplar, just another fire monster in the field, or even with the Arvata, that's enough for a game if they have just 1 body on the field. So let's now activate Zealantis, banishing everything in the field, and then we're going to be reborning everything back. If it's beneficial for you, make sure you summon their monsters face down. Your Promethean Princess will still trigger. It will still be able to pop one of their face down monsters. But what's important for us is you need to have a fire monster in your field when you banish for Zealantis. So right now, Promethean Princess would not trigger. The Little Knight is a dark, the Zealantis is a water, but we have the Arvata. Arvata come forth, we're going to pop Arvata plus their monster, and we want to make sure to summon everything next to Zealantis. Zealantis is co-linked with 2 other monsters. So we're going to be able to pop 3 cards on the field. 3 co-links. 3 co-linked monsters, that is. Pop 1, pop 2, pop 3, and just like that, let's wipe out the rest of their field with an attack. We'll attack with Promethean Princess, and the rest will be enough for game. And this non-target pop could have popped back row cards instead. So if, let's say, there was a Huggin plus a Field Spell, you could pop the Huggin and the Field Spell at the same time, and she cannot protect. Now, what do you do if you just have 1 Poplar to make a play with? Let's begin. Starting off with a normal summon Poplar. Poplar on summon, activate, grab from our deck an original Sinful Spoils. We're going to link off the Poplar into a Link Karibo. That will trigger the Poplar to equip itself into the back row here. As we then activate the original Sinful Spoils, send the Poplar to summon from the deck. We're going for Snake Eyes and not Fire King. Now, you could go the Fire King line, which I think the disruptions are a bit more conditional. So I'd say that this line is more consistent, and it's going to be the only one I show you. We're going to come forth and summon Flameburst by sending the Linkuriboh and the Ash. We're now going to use the Flameburst and the other monster to make our IP Masquerena. That will trigger the Flameburst to reborn 2 cards in the graveyard, come forth, Ash and Poplar. We're going to further link this up into a Promethean Princess, giving us extra disruption. Then, reborn from the grave, our Flameburst, activate Flameburst to equip into the back row our Masquerena, and then we're going to link off the Poplar and the Princess into an Amblo Whale. Now, I do think it's important that you use your Flameburst around impermanence. It's a lot more risky if you activate this early, they imperm your Flameburst, then you lose out on pretty much all your disruptions. So we're going to wait for them to activate anything in the back row or summon a monster, and then we're going to activate the Flameburst. Now, if they were to shotgun the impermanence, you could then chain the Flameburst to the impermanence. Now that they have a body, and you may be thinking, what the heck, the Fenrir is the reason why you would want to shotgun your Flameburst. Well, let's see what happens if we shotgun it after the Fenrir and playing around impermanence. Let's go. Come forth, Masquerena. This is your fear. They're triggering the Fenrir here, but that's okay. We're going to use the Masquerena to link up with the entire field. Let's resolve this, linking up the Amblo Whale and the Flameburst, making a 3-material Apollo USA that is a triple monster negate. Now, Flameburst reborn from the graveyard. We're going to have the Ash activate Poplar, Chainlink block the Ash from an Ash Blossom. As we add from the deck a follow-up play like Subversion if you're playing it, but in a lot of builds, they have nothing to add here after they use Original. We're going to grab the Ponix, which remember, the Ponix will trigger off of any of your fire monsters being destroyed by battle or by card effect. They're going to activate the Magician's Souls, Apollo USA, negate. And you may be thinking, the Fenrir could just attack into the Apollo, right? Well, wrong. At the start of the battle phase that you're toggle on, you're going to activate your Linkuriboh. Make sure you do it at the start of the battle phase. It'll be an S under the battle phase here, and that will be tributing over the Ash or the Poplar to then protect the Apollo USA from being attacked into. Negate the Magician's Souls. And let's see what else they do. They have a Sword Soul of Mo Yi. That is another negate. Now, this is the unfortunate scenario where they have 2 attacks, and both of them are big enough to take out the Apollo, where we only had the Linkuriboh to protect us. But there's a trick. Get ready for the trick. First, they're going to summon Alternative White Dragon. We're going to pop the Poplar and the Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. Now, generally, it is a cool play to chain the Linkuriboh onto the monster you're targeting with your Promethean Princess, but we want the Ponix to trigger. So instead, we're chaining the Linkuriboh to summon onto the field before the Promethean Princess locks us out of summoning the Linkuriboh. So pop the Poplar plus pop the White Dragon, and that will now trigger the Ponix. As we summon a Promethean Princess, Poplar also trigger. Ponix come forth and search for a follow-up play. So what do we do with one Linkuriboh and one Apollo USA that's going to be swung into by one of these monsters? Well, get ready for this. Ponix trigger, come to me, Fire Sanctuary. If they declare an attack onto Linkuriboh, just don't activate the effect. Why? Why would you not activate the effect? Well, we have a secret effect in the graveyard, the Amblo Whale. Amblo Whale off of a Link 3 or lower being destroyed by battle or by card effect will now trigger. Damage step, it does not matter. We are at the end of the damage step. Non-target pop any card on the field, wiping out the Fenrir, thus we get to keep the Apollo USA, and there you go. That is just a 1-card Poplar play if you go into the Snake Eye line. Now we'll just speed this up if you care about this. Finishing up the duel, pop the Poplar, grab a Garunix, trigger Garunix, come forth and summon. Pop from the deck an Arvata, Arvata reborn. Use the Promethean Princess to reborn the Arvata. The Ponix you summon will be negated, that's okay. Push them back, lethal damage, wham bam, thank you ma'am. Let's go. Now, what do you do if you have a Fire King core tier Ulcanix play? Unfortunately, Ulcanix is not a 1-card combo, but if we look at the stats on the website, masterduelmeta.com, the majority are using Ulcanix and they're using it at 2. So there will be scenarios where you open up with this card and all you need is any other fire monster in your hand whatsoever, and we're going to be using Ash Blossom for the pop. So come forth, Ulcanix on summon, activate to pop a fire monster on the field or in the hand. We're going to grab a Ponix here. Now, let's say we instead in our hand had a Kirin. The Kirin, for this play, what you would actually want to do is you activate the Ulcanix, and then you're going to chain the Kirin to pop the Ulcanix. So Kirin will be summoned, and then on the resolution, the Ulcanix will pop the Kirin on the field. Then the Kirin will reborn the Ulcanix. Ulcanix will also summon for the deck a Garunix. It's a much better play, but I'm showing you the weaker play with just Ash Blossom at the moment. Now we're going to trigger the Ponix because we have a fire monster that was destroyed, even though it wasn't in the hand on it being destroyed. We're going to activate the Fire King Sanctuary, play up the Fire King Island, pop the Ulcanix so it triggers to summon a body from the deck, which will be the Garunix. Now, this is different than the Sacred King Garunix, which is triggering off of a destroyed fire monster to summon from the hand. Come forth from the deck, and unfortunately, it can only summon from the deck, thus making it a Garnet. If you open it up, then you're not going to have this Ulcanix play of popping it to summon from the deck. Now we're going to use the Garunix to pop from the deck in Arvata to get it into circulation here, reborning any Fire King monster from the graveyard. We're going to further Shokan this up into a Masquerena. Now we're going to link this into a Linkuriboh as we further link this up into our Promethean Princess, thus then reborning our Arvata from the graveyard. Now we have our Monster Negate plus an Ambler Whale. Now, some players may opt to, instead of making the Masquerena, they may want to be making a Doolittle, which I don't have in the extra deck at the moment here. And Doolittle could be good for adding back your Kirin that you're going to pop from your deck during your opponent's turn. The importance of the Masquerena being in the graveyard with an Ambler Whale is you don't want to pop the Ambler Whale with the Promethean Princess, thus you're going to lock out the Ambler Whale from reborning the Masquerena at all. You need the Arvata to be popping the Ambler Whale. They're going to summon. We're not going to use the Promethean. They activate a monster effect. Now, finally, we can Arvata pop the Ambler Whale, and now it's going to trigger reborn our Masquerena. And if we don't have access to Flameburst Dragon, generally the Masquerena is not going to be able to easily go into something like an Apollo USA. Instead, we're going to summon a Little Knight. We're going to trigger Garunix, trigger the Ambler Whale, come forth and summon. You can chain link block the Garunix if you want to because it's the more important effect here. The Garunix will now be activating to pop a card from the deck. Now, by the way, this is not ashable. You cannot Ash Blossom the Garunix. It's not sending a card from the deck to the grave. It is destroying a card from the deck. Different. So pop in the Kirin trigger, reborn a Fire King from the graveyard or summon from the hand. Ponix on summon trigger for a follow-up play. We have Skyburn to pop cards in the field. They're going to come forth and Shokan into the Alternative White Dragon. We are going to then respond with a Little Knight play with our Masquerena. Masquerena on summon, wiping out that Fool, waiting for a special summon so we can pop our Arvata, because what we want is 2 level 8s on the field. That will trigger the Arvata, reborning the Kirin, and now if they special summon again, that will trigger the Sanctuary for our final form of disruption. We also have Ambler Whale, even more disruption if a level 2 wants to get popped. I should say link 3 or lower gets popped, we then pop. We have even more disruption, so correction, Lil Knight banish, come forth and summon the token. Now we're going to Sanctuary, come forth and summon. Now, this is going to be a really cool play where what do if you have nothing worthwhile to pop in the field with your Ambler Whale, right? You wipe out all their monsters, taking out the Promethean Princess. Now, it's an optional trigger, but we're going to trigger it anyway to destroy our own monster. Why would we do this? Let's banish, activate, pop. The Garunix Eternity will now trigger, reborning 2 monsters from the grave. So now we have set up Arvata and a Kirin for our next turn. Even though the Arvata already activated, I believe that this is a good play to get them set up on the field ready for next turn. There you go. Immediately, we are ready with that Monster Negate. And then let's just clean up the field as we are always doing in all of these duels. And let's keep on going. Come forth, Garunix, reborn, just like that. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Now I'm going to showcase to you the best highest ceiling play with the most disruptions with a Diablo Star plus any card to discard. This will not be playing around Nibiru. We will follow up with an anti-Nibiru play afterward, which will result in less disruption. So it's up to you if you want to play around Nibiru or not. Let's start this off with a Diablo Star, discarding any card from our hand to come forth and summon. We're going to trigger the Diablo Star to set from the deck the Original Sinful, send Diablo Star to summon from the deck, a Snake Eye Ash on summon, activate grabbing a Ponix and not a Poplar. Normal summon the Ponix, trigger to grab the Fire King Sanctuary, play it to play the Fire King Island, pop a Fire King monster, that's going to be the ideal pop, trigger the Garunix to come forth and summon. Because we popped a Fire King, we can now send Arvata to reborn that Fire King Ponix from the graveyard. And then we're going to use the Ash to send itself plus the Ponix to summon from the deck a Flameburst Dragon. Now, some players are sending the Fire King Sanctuary instead for an extra disruption, but then you are more susceptible to the Fire King Island getting wiped out, thus destroying your entire field of monsters. And the Fire King Sanctuary going into the rank 8 Xyz is another form of disruption. But a lot of TCG players do not play the rank 8 Xyz, thus they get rid of the Sanctuary. I'm recommending that you do play it. We're going to make a Masquerena with the Flameburst, reborn from the graveyard, and then further Shokan this up into a Linkuriboh. Remember, we're not playing around Nibiru here to have the most form of disruptions. We're going to use the Promethean Princess, reborn from the grave. We're going to be reborning a Flameberge and setting up Arvata into the back row instead of going directly into the Arvata. Why is that? Well, the Flameberge has the effect to special summon Arvata during the opponent's turn, thus this being a better play. We're going to further Shokan this into Amblo Whale. And now, let's go. Now, think about this. If you went straight into the Arvata, they have an Impermanence. They activate Imperm early onto Arvata. It's now negate for the rest of the turn. If they instead Imperm your Flameberge Dragon, you'll chain Flameberge to summon the Arvata, thus dodging the Impermanence. Now, if you open field to activate the Flameberge, you will also be playing into Impermanence. So it's up to you if you want to do that. I am going to play the safer way. I'm going to wait for them to get a body on the field. Fenrir's a scary card to be playing against, to wait with our monster effect on, but we're still going to be doing it. Now Flameberge summoning Arvata as we're safe from an Impermanence. That's going to trigger the Fenrir, and we're going to be using our Arvata right now to pop the Amblo Whale. Whale, wipe it off the field, trigger the Whale, trigger the Garunix, summon from the grave our Masquerena. The important part is we're not using Promethean Princess to pop the Amblo Whale, which we would then not be able to summon Masquerena. So I think a lot of you may be confused by that because when they special summon a monster, it's not going to ask you to activate any other effect except the Promethean Princess, and you may be afraid that you're going to not be able to activate something. But you just have to have the confidence to say no to Promethean Princess, say no to popping your Amblo Whale, and then use your other effects afterward. Now we're going to Masquerena, get link up with the Promethean, with the Garunix and the Flameberge into our Apollo USA. Garunix pop the Kirin reborn from the graveyard, Flameberge also reborn from the graveyard, and we're going to non-target pop a card on the field. Lots of disruptions here, a very good play. So come forth, Garunix taking out the Fenrir. Now Ponix will be searching the deck, also Snake Eye Ash will be searching. We're going to grab something like an Oak, you can grab a Poplar if you want. Now we got this Skyburn. They're going to summon a Fenrir, we're going to trigger Promethean Princess, taking out the Arvata. And this is the last opportunity to get our Linkuriboh out on the field before we are fire locked out. Now, Arvata is going to be important to pop here because it gets out another level 8 monster on the field to use alongside the Garunix. And as you can see here, this is a full field of monsters. If you were to have added the Poplar, summoned the Poplar, you'd be blocking your Princess play into Reborn the Kirin, thus you would not be able to use the Fire King Sanctuary to rank 8 exceeds. So you do want to be careful about that if you're adding the Poplar to not trigger the effect if you don't have enough room. Now they're going to further make plays into an alternative white dragon, activating the Magician's Souls. We're going to be using the Apollo USA to negate. Now what else could they have from here? They're going to activate. We're going to negate again. We have one more negate. Linkuriboh is going to be reducing the attack here. If we wanted to, we could have allowed the attack to go through to trigger the Amblo Whale to pop a card in the field. We're now going to be facing off against a Mo Yi, using the third and final negate of the Apollo USA if we wanted to, but otherwise, instead, because we're playing against the computer with limited plays, we're going to be going into the Fire King Sanctuary instead. So I could showcase some better stuff. As we now make our Garunix Eternity on summon activate, wiping out the entire field of other monsters. Now, if there's another card in the field to pop with the Amblo Whale, this would be a good opportunity to pop that card. Otherwise, pop in your own Eternity to then activate Reborn 2 monsters from the grave. We have the Arvata, we have the Kirin, and we are in a good spot. So we have that follow-up monster negate and all that good stuff, mate. Now, I will be showcasing to you the anti-Nibiru play. Get ready for that as we quickly just finish up this duel and have some fun with it. I'm not saying to play Ring Bali, just showing an interesting play where you could search Ring Bali and special summon it. Oak Reborn, not that you even need the Oak. We're going to negate the Oak instead. Pop a card, Reborn the Garunix. 10,000 damage, wham bam, thank you ma'am. Let's hop into anti-Nibiru. This is the anti-Nibiru play with Diablo Star plus any other card to discard, and it is if we get Nibiru'd. Let's do it. We're going to be discarding for the Diablo Star summon here, and then we're going to trigger, grab the original Sinful. We're on summon number 1. Send a summon from the deck, our Ash. That's summon number 2. Add from the deck a Ponix. Normal summon the Ponix. We're on summon number 3. Grabbing the Fire King Sanctuary. Activate to set up into the field spell. This is the sus part. If you want to play around Nibiru, you're going to get rid of your Fire King Sanctuary. Summoning on the 4th, summon our Flameberge Dragon. Now we're going to link them up into the Sunlight Wolf. Now, you thought this was anti-Nibiru, right? This is now the 5th summon. Well, let's see what happens. We're going to be reborning from the graveyard, trigger the Sunlight Wolf, add the Flameberge in the graveyard back to our hand here, as they then Nibiru our entire field. But what's good is that they had to Nibiru because otherwise we would have been able to make an Apollo USA, which would have negated the Nibiru. But what we have not done yet is we have not activated the Fire King Island. So usually the goal of the deck is to protect your Fire King Island from being negated, or I should say, even your follow-up plays with the Fire King Island, summoning the Garunix, going into the Arvata line. That is the main thing you want to protect, which we adequately did, as we were threatening an Apollo USA, forcing out Nibiru, and now we're going to make our other plays, including with the Nibiru token, popping from the deck the Arvata trigger. We're going to be reborning the Ponix. Now, it's important to note here that you may be wondering why we can't reborn the Flamebirds with your Promethean Princess, and the game's not bugged. It was added through the Sunlight Wolf, thus the Wolf says that the card you add with its effect cannot be summoned for the rest of the turn. All right, we're going to link this up. There were combos online showcasing, in a way, cheating the Nibiru, where they were activating Nibiru on the activation of the Wolf, which was incorrect. Thus, they didn't have to add the Flamebirds, but if they properly Nibiru, they have to add the Flamebirds in response to a proper Nibiru, and then you're not gonna be able to cheat summoning that Flamebirds from the graveyard. Now, this doesn't look that good, right? But it's actually okay. If they special summon, we could pop the Amble Whale, reborn from the graveyard. They're not big enough to battle into the Amble Whale, and let's see what they do. There's end the turn. There's not much they could do. So, the computer got confused. But if they special summon, we trigger Promethean, pop the Amble Whale. Amble Whale could trigger reborn from the graveyard, the Sunlight Wolf, or the Charmer. And then we also have Garunix triggering, reborning from the grave off of the Promethean, pop in the Amble Whale, send a Kirin from the deck, and then we could activate to reborn the Arvata. Then we have a monster negate. And then if they were to battle or destroy any of our Link 2, Link 3, or lowers, that would then trigger the Amble Whale to pop another card in the field. It's not the greatest play, but it does play around Nibiru quite effectively. Now, your eyes do not deceive you. This is another Diablo Star plus a discard play. This is anti-Nibiru. If they do not Nibiru you, and it shows exactly what you should be doing, you'll be comparing this play to the first play, which has more disruptions, but this one being more protective. It not only plays around Nibiru, it is also super poly resilient. If you're afraid of this card popping off, I think this card's becoming more popular because of how popular tier limits are. So if you don't want to lose to tier limit super poly, you'll make this play in addition to being anti-Nibiru. So we're going to discard with Diablo Star, come forth and summon, set up the back row, the original Sinful, we're on summon number 1, send to summon from the deck, Ash, we're on summon number 2, add the Ponix, Ponix will be our summon number 3, adding our Fire King Sanctuary, Sanctuary set up the field spell, we're going to send the Sanctuary to summon from the deck, a Flameburst, which is our summon number 4, and now we're on summon number 5. The Sunlight Wolf will be triggering off of the Flameburst, reborning 2 monsters from the grave. Make sure you're summoning it to where the wolf is pointing to. And this is in the previous replay where they would have activated Nibiru, but in this play, what do you do if you do not get Nibiru'd? Maybe they're holding on to it also. We're going to further showcase this up into a Doolittle Chimera, and then with the Doolittle Chimera, we're going to be making an Apollo USA. Double negate Apollo USA, so now they can't Nibiru, and thus the rest of the play is going to be playing around Super Poly. So we're going to activate the Fire King Island, pop in the Flameburst Dragon, grabbing the Garunix. Garunix will trigger, summon itself onto the field, pop from the deck Arvata. Arvata reborn from the grave, the Doolittle. Now, Arvata is an old card, so because of that, I think they forgot to put the restriction of only summon a Fire King monster from the graveyard. Instead, it's a Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast. Thus, we get to abuse it with the Doolittle Chimera, where the Promethean normally requires 3 monsters to make it. We're going to use a Link 2 instead. Doolittle and the Garunix into Promi Princess. Reborn from the graveyard, our Arvata, further showcasing into the Amble Whale. Now, if you ended on an Amble Whale plus Arvata, you would then be super polyed, potentially, if you're worried about this card. And then your Promethean Princess will be no good because you have no fire monster on the field. So this is a lot more protective, and this is the TCG player's favorite play. All right. And you've seen the disruptions a million times here, but we have Promethean Princess, Amble Pop in the Fenrir, reborn from the grave, trigger the Amble Whale, trigger to grab back the Doolittle. Doolittle getting destroyed would be ideal because it would then add back a Kirin from the graveyard. We could use the Apollo USA to negate. If you wanted to, you could have triggered the Garunix early to then pop the Doolittle Chimera to then add from the graveyard the Kirin that you popped from the deck. And then you could use Kirin to pop your Promethean Princess whenever you want to trigger the Amble Whale to pop a card in the field. So don't get confused. Fenrir is attempting to banish here. Apollo USA, negate. I don't think so, mate. Battle, sure. Taking out Doolittle Chimera. Garunix trigger, Chimera trigger, add back from the graveyard Ponix, where in this instance we would not need to add back our Kirin. Then we're going to pop the Kirin, reborn from the graveyard, pop the Fenrir, trigger the Ponix. This is all within the damage step, by the way, where a card like Fenrir would not even be able to activate, even though it already activated. We now have Arvata with our Monster Negate, just like that, mates. Arvata will be able to negate by popping the Promethean Princess, which could then trigger the Amble Whale to pop a card in the field if there's even anything worth popping. There's a lot of different conditional triggers here. Goodbye, take you out, and there you go. And we would not have the rank 8 Xyz playing. Now let's quickly discuss how do you properly counter this deck. Let's start off with Ash Blossom. When should you activate your Ash Blossom? Well, I would say the ideal Ash Blossom plays would not be the activate effect of Ash to add a Poplar from the deck or even adding a Ponix, but the second effect of the Ash to summon from the deck, you're going to cut off their access to Flamebear's Dragon. That is massive. That is one good way to use your Ash. Using Ash also on the effect of Original Sinful is also a very good use of Ash. Now in the TCG, they are telling people to Ash the Bonfire, which is good advice for the TCG, but horrible for Master Duel because a card like Droll and Lockbird is a lot more prevalent in the TCG. Thus, no one is opening up their turn 1 play by activating Bonfire. But in Master Duel, it is a whole different situation where Droll and Lockbird is not as popular. Thus, ashing a Bonfire is a one-way ticket to an easy loss against Fire King Snake Eye. Another use of Ash Blossom could be used against Fire King Island. I would not use the Ash Blossom on a Ponix. I would use it on the Fire King Island, and even the Ulcanix could be a potential good use of the Ash Blossom if they open up with Ulcanix. And of course, the same with Ash, you could negate the second effect of Oak summoning from the deck. Now let's talk about Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence. When should you use these cards? Well, we all know that Kieran is here to dodge the Imperm Veiler, so it means you no longer activate it on the Ash, right? Well, wrong. You just have to take the risk. I know it sucks, and you also don't know if you're playing against a Fire King deck or a pure Snake Eye deck. And missing out on your Veiler or Impermanence on a normal summoned Ash with no other information, it's straight up a mistake to not use it. You have to do it. And if they have the Kieran, they end up having the Kieran. Now, there are some high risk, high reward plays with the Effect Veiler and Impermanence potentially, where you could wait for them to summon a Promethean Princess and then negate the Promethean Princess before it activates. And that way, even with the Kieran in the hand, they're not going to be able to activate Promethean then pop it with Kieran because you preemptively negated the Promethean Princess. But if we highlight this analytic, even though it's mostly played at 1, a lot are playing it at 2. So if you negate the first Promethean and then they just summon another one, the other one will then not be negated. There is another play which you could only do with Infinite Impermanence, which is to wait for the end field Arvata and then on your turn negate Arvata. I think that that is a really bad idea because they could very easily, if they end on with an Arvata plus an Amble Whale, just very easily trigger the Garunix to send a Kieran, destroy a Kieran I should say, to then reborn the negated Arvata that you preemptively negated. And remember, you're playing around a Kieran being in their hand. So if they have Arvata and an Amble Whale on the field and you Imperm the Arvata, well, the Kieran could just pop the Arvata, which will then start triggering all the effects to then just end up back on having Arvata on the field anyway. Now, should you play Nibiru against the deck? Well, as you saw from the replays, there are a lot of plays that play right into Nibiru, and they do have to make concessions playing around Nibiru, and I do think Nibiru still knocks off a bunch of disruptions from their end field. And a lot of people on the ladder are going to not know how to properly play around Nibiru, especially if they go for the full Fire King line without the Flame Burge. They're going to be playing into a wide open Nibiru before they can get that Arvata out. As soon as they get the Promethean Princess, or even before then, tribute up their entire field, and they're going to get completely clapped up. And then another really good counter, I think, is Super Polymerization. Again, they can play around it, but it does require some concessions or some good critical thinking on how to play the deck correctly, which a lot of people don't have. They're going to be memorizing potentially suboptimal combos, and even the good combos that end on Arvata and Amble Whale, that's a great end field. And if you super poly the Amble Whale and the Arvata, they are super screwed. And even if they don't end on it, they may eventually, within their regular combos, Garunix and Pop Kieran, Reborn Arvata, once the Arvata hits the field, whip out your super poly, and just like that, it's not destroyed, it's not going to trigger, and then you're going to have something like a Mood Dragon on the field to protect you also from targeting effects of things like Promethean Princess. Now, a more niche hand trap you could decide to use if you want, it could be something like Ghost Spell. Maybe you're playing Snake Eye Fire King yourself, and you're sick of getting fingered by Call by the Grave. Well, not only is Ghost Spell good against the finger, but the Ghost Spell is also good for negating the Fire King Avatar Kieran. It could also negate Garunix only if it's activating from the graveyard to Reborn. The Ghost Spell could also be used against cards like Promethean Princess. You could even use it to negate a Flameburst trying to Reborn 2 monsters in the graveyard. It is quite versatile, but still, probably Veiler and Imperm are better overall on the ladder against many other different decks. Now let's talk about some rulings. The Garunix triggers from the hand, and then you activate your Fire King Avatar Kieran to pop your Garunix from the hand. Because it could summon from either the hand or graveyard, does the Garunix still summon onto the field? Is that a very cool play. No, it's a very bad play because your Garunix activating the hand must then be summoned from the hand. If it then goes to the graveyard, it will not be reborning from the graveyard. Now, another very important ruling is the Garunix, let's say it's in the graveyard and you have a Onyx in your hand and a fire monster is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you're going to be triggering your Garunix on Chain Link 1, and then could you chain the Onyx to your Garunix? No, you cannot, because any multiple cards with the effect of summoning themselves from the hand cannot be used in the same chain. Even though the Garunix is summoning itself from the graveyard, because its effect is including that it can be summoned from the hand, it's considered a hand self-summon effect, and thus all cards that are hand self-summon cannot be chained to each other within the same chain link. Next, let's see the best deck list for Snake Eye Fire King. Let's go on to the tier list here on MasterDuelMeta.com. We'll see here in tier 1 Snake Eye Fire King within just the first week of its release. It's going to be rising even more to have a power level above every single deck, including bigger than the Rescue Ace deck type, and pure Snake Eye will be falling dramatically. Now, let's click on the deck type breakdown, which we will see a lot of stats here, but I'm going to put it all together for you. You could also look at tournament-only stats if you have the pro membership, and then if we go on down here, we have the best Snake Eye deck list, but don't worry, after putting it all together, boom, this is the main deck of the best way to play Snake Eye Fire King. It's only 35 cards, but by looking at the TCG, OCG, and Master Duel, all the best ways to play the deck, this is it. Now, of course, TCG has some differences. They have the Ash at 3, and the Maxx C is obviously banned. Now let's look at the extra deck. This is the base extra deck of how you should be playing this deck. Just like that. Looking good. And then let's go on down to the extra cards you could be choosing to play. Now, I will do a slight correction here. You could choose to not play the Garunix Eternity if you're not playing Ulcanix, but if you are playing Ulcanix, you should definitely play the Garunix Eternity. And these are all the cards that between the TCG, OCG, and different Master Duel tournament topping deck lists, where they're all split on whether they should play a second Promethean Princess. TCG loves the Doolittle. The Nightingale is really good against Maxx C, as you saw in one of the plays. Dark is good for stealing a monster from the opponent's graveyard. You could then Zealantis, banish that monster you stole, and then you get to have a one-turn kill, or just using the Dark to make a Promethean Princess. Heat Soul is really good with some lines when used with the Sunlight Wolf and your Link Karibo. The Goddess is obviously very good. 1-for-1 could be good, but also bad against Maxx C. Baron could be good for some simple play of popping it from the deck and then searching your deck for a Kirin during the opponent's standby phase. Oak is good for many plays, and so is Divine Temple, putting in more effect veilers, and even the Subversion is also good for turn 2 and onwards, you know, some board breaking plays. So there you go. This is the way, including the side deck here, the best way to play the deck. And there you have it, the ultimate Snake Eye Fire King guide, where you got to see many different combos, rulings, and deck lists and all that good stuff. If you want to greatly support me, consider coming on over to twitch.tv/DK during my Sunday streams, where we not only hold a $1,000 tournament qualifier every single week, but also we will be leaking the next pack.